right, everybody. So let's have attention, please. Okay, let's all the kids pay attention. So, I spoke to Krys. We've known each other now for almost a year now, right? And Krys was the first Egyptian ever to climb Mount Everest, right? Is that correct? First Coptic Egyptian to ever, third Egyptian, first Coptic Orthodox Christian to ever climb Mount Everest. You guys know Mount Everest? Have you heard of it before? It's the tallest mountain in the world, right? It's the highest point in space. It's so high that there's not enough oxygen up there. It's like you're barely breathing. He went all the way to the top. So he's going to share about his experiences with us. And it mirrors our experiences spiritually too. So we're going to put a little spiritual twist to it. Because as we climb mountains in our own life, right, we have to overcome. We have to have faith. We have to struggle. And we never give up, right? And so Krys is going to talk to us about that amazing experience. Thank you, Krys, for taking time for joining us here.
Thank you. We got questions already. Yeah, what's up? That's a great question. It took me 2 months to climb Mount Everest. I left for, just about 2 months. Yeah, that's a really good question.
If you climbed all the way to the top, how can you...
So I could show you. That's exactly right. Yeah, so after you get to Camp 4, after you get to Camp 3, close to the top, we start using an oxygen mask, and we carry a bottle of oxygen in our backpack because even just a few steps, you lose all your breath. There's only, I think, a little bit less than 200 people in history that have ever climbed it with no oxygen. So maybe, God willing, one day I could try something like that, but not this time. Yeah. I personally used 3 oxygen tanks from Camp 3 all the way to the summit and then back down to Camp 3. And then at 3, I took off my oxygen mask because it's really uncomfortable. I could show you guys a photo of what the oxygen mask looks like, kind of like a scuba mask a little bit. Yeah.
So, I understand that, even at the minimum, it's 17,000 feet from, the ocean level. So does that mean, because there's so little oxygen in the entire mountain, does that mean that you, what was it like coming back here where there's, more oxygen and, you have all this extra oxygen?
Felt like I was drowning in oxygen, too much air. No, I'm just kidding. Not at all. So people are the human body is very strong. So people are able to function well pretty high up. And the highest village in Nepal, does anybody know where Mount Everest is? That's a pretty good guess. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So it's in between Nepal, which is really close to India. So it's on the border of Nepal and Tibet. And some people don't recognize Tibet as a country, so China. And it's right in between. And it's the most prominent mountain in the world, just under 29,000 feet. But there's a village, to answer your question as far as being high, people are living all the way up to almost 13,000 feet out there. So it's very cold. Not a lot of things grow. But the bodies can function. It's really only up to Camp 4, 26,000 feet, where the human body is not supposed to be for very long. So they call 26,000 feet Camp 4, they call that the death zone. I think they call it that because it makes it sound kind of cool, but the reason why specifically is because at that altitude, our bodies start to stop functioning, our minds become slower, we start eating our own muscle. So you don't want to stay above 26,000 feet for very long.
Let's have you start, you guys, and have questions from you till the end, because you might answer all the questions in the talk.
I do love them, though, and it makes it easier on me. Yeah. I can show you guys some photos, but the first thing I wanted to sort of describe to you guys is when I was leaving Camp 3 at 24,500 feet, and I was going to Camp 4 at 26,000 feet. I left the camp, and I'm wearing these big boots, and I left the camp not being able to feel my toes. And it was the first time my whole trip where I started getting a little bit scared of being uncomfortable because I thought it could be serious. So I left my camp and I'm wiggling my toes and they're not feeling like they're wiggling back at me. And I have these big spikes on my shoes that I can kick into the ice so I don't slip and fall. So I'm kicking in harder and harder to try to get my feet to wake up, thinking that they're just sort of cold and asleep. So we kept climbing for about another hour and a half. And I'm not getting any relief. I'm not really getting the comfort in my feet that I was hoping for. And a fear is that you're getting frostbite. And frostbite is just when something is too cold to get blood flowing into it. And it can be really bad. So we kept climbing for about another hour and a half. And I'm on this part of the mountain called the Lhotse Face. And it's really steep. So picture almost something as steep as this wall. And I'm climbing up it, and we finally get to a point where there's some relief. It's kind of flat enough for us to rest. And my Sherpa, a Sherpa is somebody that's from this area. He's a really good climber. His name was Dawa. He said, "Krys, it's time to take off your shoes. We have to look at your feet." And you can imagine with it being so cold outside, you don't want to take off your shoes. But I had to listen to him because he was my guide, and I took off my shoes, and I looked at my feet, and do you know what I saw? My feet were okay. They smelled. They were pretty dirty because I hadn't showered in 5 weeks. There's not a lot of showers out there, but they were okay. What had happened was my socks had slid down in my boots, and they had bunched up in my toes, and it created this feeling of me thinking that I was losing the feeling in my toes. I thought I was getting frostbite. So really, one thing that I learned in that, and I think it's pretty typical because it happens to me even here when I'm at home, is we can sometimes let things that are uncomfortable to us overwhelm us. And I think there's something to learn about the idea of being more comfortable being uncomfortable. So there's a verse from the Bible, Jeremiah 29:11, and it goes, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." So when I read that, it makes me think about my experience on the mountain, but it really makes me think about things here. It's easy to be distracted. Today I was like picking at a pimple on my face. It's easy to kind of let these things sort of consume your thoughts, but it's not uncommon to be uncomfortable. So I think God will often give us things that we think are very challenging, but it's never because life is out to get us. It's rather because there's something to learn from it. So I want you guys to think that when school is hard, or maybe mom and dad are giving you grief, or you just feel like you can't understand why things are coming at you the way that they are, typically it's for us to walk away learning something, not because the world or God or the universe is out to get us. But we always walk away a little bit stronger, a little bit wiser. Yeah.
That reminds me of a story of Job for some reason. I don't know why.
I think that's exactly the same idea, and you walk away from stuff like this more empowered. It's easy to get, and I was going to kind of address it, but you bring up a good point. We get very comfortable and we get very used to sort of everything that we have around us. And for 2 months, I really didn't have very much. And to tell you the truth, I was still very happy. I do obviously, being able to see my family and nice things, and who doesn't like, wearing nice clothes. But it's easy to realize you don't need much of it, and you can still be very happy without any of it. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll come back to it. Oh, go ahead. Okay. Well, the only thing that I was going to leave on that Jeremiah verse was that anytime we have an obstacle, it's normally to prepare us for the next obstacle. It's not to defeat us. It's really just to prepare us for something that's bigger that's coming next. So I think about doing something like Mount Everest, and then it brings me back to the world where I sort of feel like I can accomplish a lot of things with God by my side. Yeah.
Where did you stay?
I stayed, so for about 60 days, I stayed in a tent. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when you get up to mountains as big as Mount Everest, anytime you get above 26,000 feet, your body isn't equipped to be able to go from the bottom to the top without having to come back down to allow you to create some red blood cells. So I climbed this mountain technically like 4 times. I didn't go to the top 4 times, but I went up to those camps that you see almost 4 times and came back down to the bottom before I got to go all the way back up to the top. And that's why it takes 2 months. It's a lot of up and down. Yeah.
Did your legs like really hurt?
So it's a very good question. When I was finished, my legs really hurt, like really bad. But that was probably the only day of the whole trip that I think my legs hurt so bad. And I think part of it is because it had been 2 months and my legs were so tired. But I think the other part of it is kind of like, you guys know when church is getting close to the end and you feel even more antsy than when it got started because you know it's close to close to being done. I think that's how it was, is like your mind sort of starts to tell you you're at the finish line, so then you begin to get even more impatient. But for the most part, I felt pretty good, and I was grateful for that because it was so long. There's a lot that's out of your control when you're on a mountain like this, and I think that's sort of like life. We think we have a lot more control over things than we really do. And then you kind of realize in a situation like this, we have so little control over anything. And I'm really grateful because the weather was as good as it was. My health was as good as it was. And those are 2 things that, you know, no matter how strong you are, no matter how prepared you are, you can't control that stuff. And that's like life. It's like we think we have control over all of it, but really God's the one sort of giving us this route. Yeah.
What did you eat?
I ate a lot. What did I eat? I ate a lot of potatoes. There's a lot of potatoes out there because it's what grows. I ate a lot of rice and pasta. Do you guys know what Spam is? Spam is meat in a can. It's pretty good. Some people don't like it. We ate a lot of Spam, some tuna. Because everything out there is hiked on people's backs, there's no refrigeration. You can't eat meat pretty much after Camp 1 because it's just not safe. You know, it'll spoil and it's just not worth those risks. Yeah. Yeah, I had a really big backpack. The backpack's probably big enough to carry maybe 3 days worth of stuff, but it wasn't always that filled. Yeah.
Did you slide down the mountain?
I thank God every day I did not slide down the mountain. When people slide down a mountain like this, they normally don't get back up. So when we're climbing with a rope. I can show you guys some neat videos of sort of what the climbing is like. But we don't want to slip. And fortunately, you know, God was there protecting a lot of us. So most everybody was able to come home safely, thank God. But not everybody. Yeah.
I've heard that the summit of Mount Everest is like completely covered in flags. Is this true?
The summit of Mount Everest is completely covered in flags, and I can show you a photo of it. So Nepal is mainly a Buddhist country, and the Buddhists have like prayer flags that are on everything. So there are a lot of these colorful flags all over the mountain. Yeah. You know, at the time I didn't think I did not place a flag. I didn't place any flag. No. Yeah, while I'm looking at this.
Guys, do you want to have him start his talk? I mean, let him talk first,
That's
and then
okay.
we'll ask questions. Because he has cool pictures and videos for us. Okay?
Well, while I'm pulling this one up, did you have a question back here? So, no. It was like the opposite. And I think because coming back down, the trip is over, so you're just kind of like, get me out of here. I'm done. And going down is actually way more dangerous than going back up because gravity is pushing you down, so you don't want to slip and fall. And then on top of that, you're tired, so you're just sort of not being as diligent as you should be. So going down is always, you would think it would be easier, but it's always harder. My worst day was going down. And yeah. You guys want to see some cool climbing? And then I can... I do have more biblical lessons. I was a little prepared. I should have looked up. Can you guys see that? So you guys see that's just a fixed ladder? That's one way that people get past this thing called a crevasse. A crevasse is a big crack in the ice. And that's me right there with my backpack rappelling down. Rappelling is just a way that you can get down a mountain with the rope. And that's Dawa, that's my Sherpa. You could consider him my guide. He kept me safe. Yeah, there were. So this year, I think there was total, it was actually a smaller year than usual, but 300 Western permits. So like 300 Egyptians, Americans, Asians, and then probably another, that was me that tripped. And then, that's me. Yeah, the one with the blue backpack. So I'll show you guys another photo, and then I'll tell you something else. Does anybody have a question while I'm pulling this up? Yeah. You guys are a great audience. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah.
Aren't you guys scared that the ladder's gonna like snap in half? Kind of like it when you guys were climbing. It was like kind of like a bridge, but it looked like it was gonna snap in half.
Yeah, you try not to think about all the things that can go wrong because they can really make it not so fun of experience. But similar to, I think, the way that we should live our lives at home is having a lot of faith. Having a lot of faith that God is there to protect us, that he's there to watch us and guide us, and that I was there at the right time, sort of under his guidance. Because when you start thinking about all the things that can go wrong, one thing that I've learned is they seem to be going wrong. So it's good to be prepared for when things go sideways, but I don't think it's a good thing to be consumed with how bad things could get. Does that make sense? So the second, yeah. It's really hard to get your friends to sign up for stuff like this, so I didn't have any. I made friends when I climbed Mount Everest. My Sherpa probably was the closest friend that I made, and but no, I wasn't able to get any of my friends from home to go with me. I think because it's so far, and I started preparing to climb Mount Everest 10 years ago. So for almost a third of my life, I worked towards this goal and prayed and got my family to support me through it. So, yeah, it's hard to spring on people. Yeah.
So did you climb any other mountains?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. I've climbed a lot of mountains. Before I went to Mount Everest to make sure that I was prepared, the most prepared, I went to South America. I went to a country called Bolivia to climb in the mountain range called the Andes. The Andes is one of the biggest mountain ranges in the world, the second biggest mountains behind the Himalayas. Everest is in a range called the Himalayas. And I went to go climb some of the biggest mountains down there just to make sure that I was going to be okay in these ones. So, it was kind of like a slow process to get there. Can I get one point, and then I'll answer you guys' questions? So the second lesson that I had for you guys was you don't have to be in the mood to do something. Doing something will put you in the mood to do something. And I know that might not make sense immediately, but when I would wake up to leave to climb, we would normally leave at probably 12 o'clock at night, or maybe 1 in the morning, some of the coldest times of the day. So I was never in the mood to unzip my sleeping bag. I was never in the mood to put on my cold boots. I really hated getting out of my tent and exposing myself to the weather. But one thing that I learned is that climbing got me in the mood to do more climbing. And that made me think of a Bible verse, Philippians 4:6. And it goes, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ." So what it makes me think of being home and being at church, and I really try to apply it. I should apply it more. But we don't always feel like we're in the mood to wake up and go to church. or we're not always in the mood to pray before bed or to read the Bible. But if it's anything like climbing or anything like I've discovered going to the gym, is doing it gets you in the mood to do more. So I don't think, and Abuna could correct me, but I don't think there's anything wrong with not necessarily wanting to get up and pray. But praying will get you in the mood to pray more. Does that make sense? So you sort of just have to push past the discomfort, and then the next thing you know, it gets a little bit more comfortable. Because I think there's an idea that you see, like my big smile on top of that mountain, that I was like really happy and enjoying all of it. And I was very happy overall, but it doesn't mean that every minute I'm like enjoying it. What were you going to say? No, so that's at 3, that picture is at 3:33 a.m., so it was dark outside, so that's why there's no lights. And then you can see all those colorful flags behind me. Those are the ones that I was describing. And then if you can see that red rope to my left, and you can see the bright green rope that's tied to my waist, that's sort of how you stay connected to the mountain. So I can show you guys another video if somebody has a question. Yeah, that's the true summit. That's the true summit. I wish, because Everest has become such a popular climb, and even though it's not a ton of people, it's enough people that it's created some issues as far as crowds. We left at 7 p.m. to try to avoid as many people as we could, but then that put us on the top in the dark, so it's kind of, you can't have it all sometimes. Yeah. So I really wanted to have a picture of me and my big cheesy smile, so I took my oxygen mask off. But you can see it there pulled down against my chest. So after I took the photo, then I put the oxygen mask on. It's not quite what you would think, where you take off the oxygen and you just stop breathing. You just can't do very much before you're sort of huffing and puffing. So you can breathe without it, but you can't walk very far. You certainly can't run without it on. I'll pull up another photo if anybody has a question in the meantime. Yeah, you guys are the best.
How did you get the rope on the top?
That's a great question. So, the rope on the top. So, typically, I'll show you guys another cool one. So, when you rock climb, and that's what my background is in, rock climbing, you bring the rope attached to you to the top, and you're clipping it into the wall as you get higher. So only the first person has no rope to save them above them, but everybody after that has the rope. On Mount Everest, because there's so many people that want to climb it and they got to get us through relatively quickly, there's a group of people, they call them the Icefall Doctors. They're local Sherpas who are some of the best climbers in the world, and they will be the first ones to summit Mount Everest, and they take thousands and thousands of feet of rope, and they are setting it all the way so people like myself can try to get up there a little bit more safely. Yeah. I'm listening. That's a great question. I can't imagine doing it. Well, I can't imagine doing it with less technology, because I did it with less technology in the past. So when I went to Bolivia and climbed in the Andes, it was actually this day last year. I was gone and on top of a mountain. I just got the iPhone notification. When I went on that trip, I didn't talk to my family for days on end because I had no way to communicate sort of out on the mountain. And then I met somebody out there who had a little satellite phone, and you can get service anywhere in the world. So I couldn't make any phone calls, but I was able to send my family and Paige messages every single day just to let them know where I was. And then everybody was able to just follow my little like GPS location, so they would just see me moving. That's a good question though. This right here, I don't know if you guys can tell, this is another ladder, but it's a vertical ladder. So you can see the people climbing up and the line of people. Not great sound, to be honest. So the third point that I had to make, or the third lesson, was, we kind of touched on it, was this idea of being grateful. It seems really easy to look past being grateful every day because we have so much abundance. And I think when we have so much, like cool Nikes and Apple Watches and, you know, cars, and it's just easy to forget how the rest of the world has it. But for 60 days, I slept in a tent just about. And for that same time, I think I took maybe 5 showers. And I never had a good chair. I had a chair, but it was kind of the kind that I had to flex my abs on because all the rocks underneath made it not very balanced, for almost 2 months. And I look back and I think how grateful I was because at least I had a tent. A lot of people don't even have a tent. They just sleep outside with nothing. Or at least it was a shower in a tent, but I'm very grateful because a lot of people don't even have a shower. They just have a bowl of warm water. Some of it's not even warm. And then on top of that, like, I'm grateful because I knew it was only going to be 2 months and I'd be coming home here, when a lot of people that live in the Himalayas, that's their whole life and they'll never get to leave that. So Psalm 118:24 says, "This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and let us be glad in it." It seems so simple to be grateful for these little things. You know, I was uncomfortable in church today because I thought it was too cold. And then I think to myself, like, what a blessing to have air conditioning that pumps as hard as this. And like, what a blessing to be wearing a sweater. So anytime that we feel like we don't have much going for us, or we feel like we want to be upset about something, one thing that I learned when I was out there, and I still try to apply it now, is if you could just take a step back, take a deep breath, maybe say one thing you're grateful for, maybe say one person you're grateful for, it will make a big difference, kind of change your mindset a little bit. I have one more lesson if anybody has a question. Yeah.
You brush your teeth.
Paige is not going to like this answer.
What was the question?
Did I brush my teeth?
Oh.
I could have been better. I could have been better. There was a lot of people that were brushing their teeth more often than me, and you know, just certain things aren't a priority. My last lesson
Question in the back.
is the idea of our mortality, and Genesis 3:19 says, "By the sweat of your face you will eat bread till you return to the ground, because from it you were taken. For you are dust, and to dust you shall return." So it can seem kind of sad, especially when you guys, how old are you guys? Are you guys all under 10, 9? Almost 8. So at such a young age, it's hard to ever imagine that you'll be as old as even me. Because I remember when I was 11, and I thought 32 was, like, old. So this is a difficult message for you guys, but it's an important one. We won't be here forever. Mom and Dad won't be here forever. Abuna won't be here forever. You guys won't be here forever. And it might sound sad to think about that, but it's really not as sad as you think, because when you think about things not being forever, then you start thinking about what's really important to you. When I discovered climbing, I think one reason I gravitated towards it so much is because being on the short end of a rope really makes you look at your life with a different perspective than you would otherwise. And I don't think people have to rock climb to realize that life is short, but I think when you really begin to realize that life is not that short, you begin to sort of decide what's the most important to you. So most of the time, I think what a lot of people will discover is their relationships are very important. I think a lot of the reason why religion is so important and why it's so important to be close to the church is because it's much bigger than us. And then when we're gone, the church is still here, so we're connected to something much bigger. You guys think it's silly when your mom and dad show you so much attention and show you so much love, but they are inside of you guys, so they see their legacy going on and living through you. When you're older, it will click a little bit more, but just know, when things are limited, kind of like if we were at Disneyland, we know the day is going to end. You have a lot of fun that whole day because you know you have to go home at night. So I think it's important to look at your lives the same way and say, one day I'll go home, I'll be with God, so how did I live my life? How did I treat people? how did I spend my time? So climbing is probably one of the most important things to me because it reminds me how important life is to me, and there's just so much to be grateful for. Yeah, questions in the back. That was all I had for lessons.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay.
Very nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. So everyone would think that the hardest part of climbing Mount Everest was somewhere high up on the mountain, exposed to the elements or with an oxygen mask. But I think the hardest parts were the anxiety before I left, which is like one place I probably found God a lot, is anytime things are going sideways is when you get closest to the church. And then coming back, the first month back, I think I've been back about a month and a half now. It hasn't been the easiest transition. I have read some literature about it. I think some of it is like biological. You just dream about something for so long and envision something so long. Once it's done, I imagine it's like sending a kid to college. You're just like, they're not coming back, So I've been working through those emotions, and I think part of the reason it's been difficult is because I didn't prepare for that part. It's like I prepared for how difficult the mountain was going to be, but I didn't really prepare mentally and emotionally for what coming home was going to be like. And I've probably been learning more about myself in this short time that I've been back than I did maybe leading up to it and even being there. It hasn't been the easiest, to be very candid, but I'm doing good. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's unique. I imagine I'm not an Olympian or some crazy athlete like that, but I have a feeling when I read literature about other people that have done things like this, it sounds like it's pretty across the board. Yeah.
So my question was actually more just related to climbing in general. From what I understand, I'm not a climber, but you often are I don't remember the word you used, but your guide, you spend all your time with the freedom, right? Have you ever had someone who's a really difficult personality who you've kind of had to deal with, and what did you learn from that?
So that's a really good question. I had some really difficult personalities that were in the group with me, but I've fortunately never been. So I'll give you an example, because I think there's two types of people that are on these kind of trips, and they're not climbers. So it's not two types of climbers. It's two types of people that are looking for adventure. I think it's have you ever been to a restaurant with somebody that treats the staff like they're there to really just serve them? It's this is my experience, and I need you to deliver a service to me. And for me, it's always made me kind of uncomfortable when people will treat waiters or waitresses a certain way. But you guys have that, and you know what I'm talking about. And then I don't know if you guys have ever paid to ever go to a seminar or maybe go to an event where somebody's speaking that you're interested in. You'll go somewhere where you've paid to do something, and even though they're there to teach you, you're also there to really learn and absorb. So you're kind of on your best behavior. You're the one sitting in the front of the class. You're there to take something away. I think those were the two types of climbers that were out there, is those people that expect everyone to sort of coddle them and do the work for them, and sort of, you are here to serve me because I've paid to go on this trip. And then I think there are others that are sort of like students. I identify as being a climber. I really identify as being a climber. So when I'm there learning things, I'm look at this classroom that I'm in. Look at these instructors that I have. So I almost feel like I'm overperforming because I want to be Dawa, aren't you proud of me? Look what I can do, And I don't think everybody has that same attitude. But that will color your whole experience. So to answer your question, that was kind of a long answer. The way I dealt with it on this mountain specifically is I avoided them. It's not easy to do that because obviously there's like close quarters, but so much of this experience is in your mind and being able to keep your emotions and sort of your mind in check. My patience was wearing for people that just didn't have the right attitude, and for me personally, I just sort of had to remove myself, which I don't think that was the way that I dealt with it. Never a guide though. I've never had a guide that had that attitude. It's not a weird question. It's a popular one. So it cost the permit to Nepal, the permit to the government, because this is like their version of the pyramids. It's pretty much their whole economy, is $12,000 US. And that's just the permit to the government. The whole trip, I would guesstimate, somebody asked me this yesterday, I think just about maybe $70,000. And that doesn't include the many mountains that I've climbed before this, all with the intent that I knew this was going to be it. Yeah. Yeah, we could have got a car, but this will be with me forever.
Not these days.
Yeah, exactly. Not a cool one, at least. Yeah.
So, 2 questions. Was there internet there?
No Wi-Fi.
At base camp, there was internet. So at 17,700, there was some internet. Not very good internet, but enough for me to be able to like FaceTime call Paige and check in.
Oh, so you could like record?
I did. I carried a lot of batteries with me and a solar charger. I don't know if you guys know, we can use the sun to charge things these days. Yep. I know, crazy.
Have you ever heard of solar? How could it reach
Yeah.
the sun? Have you ever heard of solar panels?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, like, how did you get to Mount Everest?
So that's a really good question. It's very far. So I flew from here to Dubai, and then Dubai is, I think that was like a 17-hour flight. And then from Dubai, I took a 6-hour flight to the capital of Nepal called Kathmandu. And then from Kathmandu, I took a small plane to a small airport in the mountains called Lukla. And I started walking at 12,000 feet. So from 12,000 to the top back, that's where it starts. That's how much feet that we gained by foot. So I wanted to, when I started the trip, I said, I'm going to walk out of this place. And when I was finished, nobody was walking out because everybody is very eager to go home. To tell you like what really happened was I hadn't showered for 9 days, and I came off the summit, and I had never smelled this smell before. And when I took off my clothes in my tent, I refused to put them back on. Like, I was ready to... I didn't even come home with them, to be honest. I gave them to Dawa, and he wanted to keep them. So, God bless him. I hope he washed them. I came home not wearing my climbing clothes. I can show you guys. Yeah, I'll show you guys what this camp looked like, and then I can answer questions for as long as you... So this is Camp 2 to Camp 3. So you guys see these little people? Those are people.
I thought those were.
That's
Those
the
look
Lhotse
like
face.
bushes.
And that's Camp 3. So could it give you an idea how steep it is?
How did you like go down?
Very slowly.
You could have slid down.
Yeah. So you guys see how steep it is?
It
No,
looks
this
like a
is
slide.
It would be a really fun slide.
It'd be the
Did you
last
go
slide
to
you
like
ever
the
ride.
edge of the top?
The last slide you ever ride.
Or did you go to the edge of the top?
You want me to play that one again? Just so you can get the idea. No, not at all.
They can't every day.
So the tents will live at higher camps, and then they're left there. So like I slept in 3 different tents. So carried up once and then stashed there.
You're not carrying the tent.
No, I'm not carrying the tent every day. Just like small, and that like this. So most of the time we're in these smaller tents, but then at base camp we're in these big tents, and that's because like we're spending the most time in base camp. And then, do you want to? Oh yeah, we're good. I think we only have time for like maybe one more question.
Do you want to show them? Do you have more pictures?
So that's camp 3. And those people as well.
How was the fresh air?
It was awesome. It was. I mean, you just sort of get used to. I was talking to Paige's mom on the phone, and I heard her whisper to Paige, "Is like, is he okay? He sounds so short of breath." And it's just like you're constantly short of breath, but it's like a very nice short of breath, like Lake Tahoe, but on steroids. Yeah. I don't have. This is how you keep your feet warm. You just fill up a bottle of water, a bottle with hot water. Never so grateful for hot water. Bigger one, and then you just put it at the bottom of your sleeping bag, and then put your feet up against it, and it's warm for a few hours. A bottle of water, hot water. Yeah. It's,
It must be nice and relaxing.
Where'd you get the shower?
you get the showers at base camp. So at base camp, there's a shower tent, and then it's like a gravity system. So obviously there's rocks and slopes everywhere. So there'll be a bucket high up with a hose that's connected to like a faucet at the top of a tent, and you have the bucket's worth of water. So, but you'd be surprised. Like when you got nothing else, it was pretty comfortable.
Can you say the forward lesson?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So thank you guys for having so many questions. You really have made my day. I love all your smiles. But the 3 lessons that I came with, this one might be one of the biggest. It's being comfortable, being uncomfortable. And that's with Jeremiah 29:11. For I now know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. And we might not always see what the plan is, but we trust the discomfort that it's there to teach us something. And the second thing is this idea of having to be in the mood to do something. It's okay to wake up not in the mood to go to church, but when you get to church, it puts you in the mood to stay at church and puts you in the mood to come back. So we push past the discomfort to keep showing up. So that's, and I associated that with Philippians 4:6. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ. Lesson 3 is like the most basic lesson. It's to be grateful, and it reminds me of Psalms 118:24. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And another one, Thessalonians 5:18. Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. And the last lesson is life is short, but that's okay. It's okay for it to be short because it teaches us what's important and where to focus our time. And that reminded me of Genesis 3:19. By the sweat of your face you will eat bread till you return to the ground, because from it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return. I really appreciate you guys being such a good audience. Thank you. My name's Krys.
Thank you, Chris. That was really, really amazing. We thank Chris and Paige for making the time to do this, and really appreciate sharing your experience, because it's not something that we're all probably going to relate to as far as climbing Mount Everest, except for the part maybe of taking a shower every month or something. I'm sure some of you can relate to that. But otherwise, we really thank you for your time, and this was beautiful. Thank you. God bless.